classroom and have a designated space to care for themselves during the lunch hour. This simple but intentional gesture had a notable impact. An average of 28 teachers visited the coordinator's office each week to participate in Wellness Wednesday in some way. I'm happy to share that Wellness Wednesday initiative remains intact and has continued in school year 25-26. As I bring my testimony to a close, I want to emphasize that the Wellness Wednesday depends on having a dedicated staff member and adequate resources to sustain it. This is why it's crucial that the Full Service Community School Initiative remains fully funded under OSSI. Furthermore, I would urge the council to consider funding OSSI's community school program at the level comparable to DCPS's Connected Schools model. In closing, I'd like to read personal statements we collected from faculty members at Minor about the impact that Wellness Wednesday has had on their well-being. Wellness Wednesday has become an important part of my week because it gives me the time and space to recharge. The calm ambiance with aromatherapy, snacks, chair massages, and light games creates a peaceful environment that helps reduce stress and boost my mood. It also gives us uninterrupted time to connect with colleagues in a positive way, which strengthens our teamwork. Most of all, it gives us something to look forward to each week and truly supports my overall well-being. Another teacher shared, Wellness Wednesday is a good reminder that I need to slow down and check in with myself, even in the middle of everything happening at school. I spend so much time supporting everyone else and juggling a million things that I don't always pause to see how I'm actually doing. Having this intentional space in the week helps me to reset and breathe a little. It's a small midweek reset, but it makes a big difference. Thank you for allowing me the time to testify.
Thank you, and I do have your statement here.
Thank you.
Kedra Williams.
Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson and members of the committee as the whole. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Kedra Williams, and I serve as a Community Schools Coordinator at Latin American Youth Center, LAYC. In this role, I manage the community school program at LAYC Career Academy, public charter school, which supports non-traditional students ages 16 to 30, many of whom are new immigrants or young adults seeking a second chance at education. Today, I wish to highlight the crucial role of the community schools program and how LAYC implements the model. Our community schools program is instrumental in addressing chronic absenteeism and enhancing student achievements by providing extensive support in high school and GED students who face significant educational challenges. LAYC is dedicated to empowering youth as they transition into adulthood, whether through educational support, employment assistance, securing safe housing, or fostering wellness and artistic talents. Each coordinator works closely with the school support team to ensure students and families have access to these resources, and the coordinator remains an informed part of the school team. Needs and assessments are conducted across all stakeholder groups. The coordinator is based out of the school, attending support team and attendance meetings. LAYC's model focuses on three main areas: basic needs, student wellness, and school culture. Implementation of these areas is dictated by the feedback received from students, staff, and families, and the capacity of program staff and resources. Through OSSI Community Schools Grant, we provide services that keep students engaging and thriving. The impact is clear. These services help students stay in school and succeed, but the needs far exceed our current capacity. Last year, our mental health program including a part-time therapist and weekly workshops. Demand was much higher, and yet we had to cut therapy services entirely after losing our dedicated therapists due to budget constraints. Funding has not kept pace with growing needs. These reductions over the years have forced us to scale back critical services, especially mental health support, despite overwhelming demand. Transportation is another barrier. Once students age out of the Kids Ride Free program, options are limited, making it harder for them to attend school consistently. We respectfully urge the council to establish a pathway for stable, sufficient funding for community schools. Consistent investment ensure that we can meet students' needs and prevent young people from leaving school simply because they lack support. These students are our future workforce and community leaders. With your commitment, we can keep them on the path to success. Thank you for your time and dedication to our youth.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Chile Obregon Molina.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson and members of the Committee of the Whole. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Shaylee Obregon, and I represent the Latin American Youth Center and the Community Schools Partner at Coolidge High School. This year at Coolidge, the community schools model has continued to prove that when schools are full, resourced as hubs of support for students and families, real transformation happens. LOIC uses proven strategies in positive youth development and social emotional learning to build student leadership, resilience, and long-term stability. With LOIC functioning as the coordinator for this program, we bring in the expansive resources and community connections that have been fostered through an over 50-year history of a commitment to serving the community. This is the reason we have been able to continue to serve the schools with reduced funding. In response to attendance concerns, an attendance and absenteeism intervention team was launched in September 2025. This team conducts targeted outreach, home visits, and coordinated resource referrals for students facing chronic absenteeism. Each staff member manages a caseload of high-need students to remove barriers and restore consistent school connections. As the community schools coordinator, I am an integral part of this team. And we have seen modest decreases in truancy rates. Just as importantly, Coolidge leadership identified school climate and student connection as top priorities. This decision was reinforced by student feedback in the asset and needs assessment results. In response, we invested heavily in safe spaces, therapeutic group programming, and school-wide engagement. School leadership has directly observed improved behavior and engagement among students participating in group programming, so much so that we are discussing replicating programs to support other groups of students. The We the Girls program also attracted corporate investment from a longtime LOIC partner, which now funds the group's lunches and financial literacy workshops, showing how community schools leverage public dollars to attract private sector support. Through this connection, this corporate partner has also supported the summer program. It is vital that community schools receive increased and consistent funding to expand staff support, as these positions are the backbone of the wraparound services our students rely on. However, budget cuts have forced us to eliminate essential roles. In addition to filling the roles that have been eliminated or reduced in capacity, we feel it is vital to add a second coordinator or assistant role to the coordinator to meet the demand of needs, engage the community, and expand the capacity of the program. The workload is immense. These additional supports will allow for a deeper investment in schools and communities in DC with the most need. Without adequate staffing and budget, we cannot fully address the complex challenges our student faces or maintain the trusting relationships that keep them connected to school. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, each of you, for your testimony. Ms. Dupree, one of the schools you work with is Minor, and that caught my attention because Minor's not been doing so well. So help me correlate the work that you're doing with the school not doing so well.
So our community school coordinator has been focusing their efforts around helping students who are struggling with attendance. The school did initiate a laundry service program, and we were able to purchase washer and dryer units through community school funding. And so this year, the coordinator is managing that effort and managing the school uniform bank and working with the leadership of the school to identify students who have those level of concrete and high needs. The coordinator is also going to be managing their on-site food pantry and other concrete support that does influence school attendance and school readiness. So yes, while there are some notable challenges at Minor, this community schools coordinator work this year is going to be focusing more on supporting some of those students who are struggling in the day-to-day attendance, as well as leading some groups that focus on SEL.
How many years have you been at Minor?
This will be our second cohort at Minor. It's a 3-year cohort cycle, and this will be our second cohort, I'm
So you've
sorry,
been there 4 years?
6. Each grant cycle is 3 years.
Yes, but you're in the second,
Second cohort, yes.
and you're in the 3rd year of it?
We were extended to a 4th year. That was a decision that
Sure.
OSFI had made when
But so you've been there 3 years of the second cohort.
correct.
All right, because Minor, so I'm looking at their scores, I think it's CAPE, and they went from in ELA from 7.75 in 22-23 to 3.3 in 24-25. That I assume is proficient. And math from 8.69, actually in 23-24 they were 10.8, and then last year they were at 5.4. So academically, that school is not doing well.
Well, and if I can also point out too, there have been some transition in principal leadership over the last, I would say 4 to 5 years that we've been there. This is the second year of the new principal leadership. And I know that she's working very diligently with her team, which is also new, to bring in more systems of support and structure for students and student learning.
So would it be worse if you weren't there?
I'm sorry, can you
Would it
repeat
be
that?
worse if you weren't there? That may be kind of a tough question to answer. And I didn't mean it glibly, but I mean, I think the testimony has been pretty convincing that communities and schools is valuable. A lot of good things come from it, but it totally looking at it with no other consideration, it would look like communities and schools was counterproductive at Minor. I'm not sure I really want to go down that lane, but I just am probing you since you're at Minor 6 years.
Mhm.
How effective community schools has been there.
Well, to answer in a more concrete way in terms of support for families, there are numerous families who have come to the coordinator for not just some of those concrete supports, but connection to community resources for case management, to have a case manager to work with them in the home. So yes, while I can understand the concern around academic performance, I can say that where the coordinator has really been able to show some strong results is working one-on-one and direct with the families that have come to them for that wraparound support.
I think I'll leave it there. Mr. Councilmember Fruin?
Thank you very much, Chairman Mendelson. Mr. Boots, thank you for your testimony. Thank you to all of the witnesses for your testimony and for the work that you do. Mr. Boots, we had a hearing, I don't know, it's a blur, but a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was months, about Bold Schools that you testify about here. And one of the things that I'm struggling with, and maybe me, is we have the Bold Schools Initiative, emphasis on academic coaching. Then I'm hearing about MTSS, which emphasis on behavioral health supports and referred to as a coach, but different than the coach. And then the communities in schools where there's a staff person who's dedicated to that. How do these three things fit together? If we as a council were persuaded by what you said on Bold Schools and persuaded on communities in schools and persuaded on MTSS, what's the implication? What do we do with that?
I think what you probably heard at Bold Performance Schools hearing is that all three are important. And what you also heard are from transformational leaders at those schools that ensure that whatever strategy is implemented well. They also build community. Every Bold Performance School I've ever been in you feel it when you get in there. You feel it when you talk to the teachers. You feel it when you talk to the students. You feel it when you talk to the parents. There's a community there. Are they community schools? I don't know. I don't know what the list of community schools are, right? Nia White was here. What we also know in the data is that those schools have lower rates of chronic absenteeism. And in the DC SES survey, those students say that they have stronger supportive relationships from their teachers, that they feel safer at school. That's because they build communities. And when they build communities, kids want to come to school. When they offer field trips, kids want to come to school. And then when they come to school, they have teachers who know their content, teach it well, utilize data to improve. And those schools have, in a sense, it's the design sprint methodology, right? In a sense, like, what are we addressing the root cause? Do we have a strategy for it? Do we have a strategy to look at data to continuously improve it? That's what Bold Performance Schools do. They do all of those things.
Yeah, so I hear you on that. It's just, we hear about all these great things. And in some ways, the Bold Schools rubric sounded like MTSS, that, creating a proper base, going to small groups, going to one-on-one. But I'm grappling with, okay, people are suggesting different good things. How do we put them together in a way that makes sense? Mr. Goldstein, thank you for your testimony. The 300,000 figure, am I right? That's different and more than anything that we're doing now.
Not much, actually. DCPS allocates 250,000 approximately per connected school. So it's only a slight increase from what DCPS is doing. It is a larger increase from what OSSI is doing because OSSI will give the incentive grants to a CBO like Communities in Schools or LEYC. Those grants could be 160,000, for example, and cover 4 or 5 schools. So that's much less per school. But connected schools through DCPS is pretty close to the number we're recommending. Our number is based on looking at being able to afford central partnerships, like bringing in the dental, the medical care, and a few additional programs at about $175,000 plus the $125,000 of salary for the coordinator.
Okay, so I have many, many more questions, but can't do it. But I guess on the connected schools, what I was hearing about was $140,000 for a staff person, but you're saying it's another $110,000 to be used to procure services?
Historically, DCPS has also given the money for services. So if you put it together, it's been close to 250,000. They can tell you today what it is now.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you to each of the witnesses for your testimony. Raymond Armenta, who is Community Schools Coordinator with Latin American Youth Center. Jessica Giles, who is Executive Director, DC Center for Strong Public Schools Action Fund. Laura Meistus, CEO of DC Prep. Patricia Stamper, who's an ANC Commissioner. Tara Brown, who's with PAVE. Meredith Anderson, who's also with PAVE. Kiana Lemons, who is also with PAVE. Sean Boone Ruffin, who's also with PAVE. Tanisha Holder, who is with Empower Ed. Elizabeth Weiss, who is with Empower Ed. Devon Montgomery, who's with Empower Ed. Chandler Denard, who's with Empower Ed. Zach Wilson, who's with Empower Ed. That's that page. So I'll go back to the top. Mr. Armenta, it's kind of lonely there, but we're glad to see you in person.
Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson and members of the Committee of the Whole. I'm speaking as a resident of Ward 5, an active community member and a community schools coordinator at Cardozo Education Campus in Ward 1 with Latin American Youth Center. I urge you to maintain full funding and support for community schools in Washington, D.C. Just as individuals invest in stocks and bonds to build personal equity, knowing that growth requires time and commitment, we must recognize that investing in our community's future through education is one of the most impactful and transformative choices we can make. Community schools serves as a lifeline for many students and families, providing critical support beyond academics by addressing food insecurity, housing challenges, and access to essential resources. The schools who participate in community schools program create opportunities for those struggling with basic needs to continue their education, equipping them with tools to build a stable future for themselves, their families, and ultimately our shared community. Which has also become more difficult with the reduction of funds. With the reduction of funds, I've seen many resources dry up that many of our students and families rely on to get by each week. With an increase in funding and stable funding pathways, we can help rebuild lost assets and resources to help further improve our school and culture. In just a short time in my role as a community schools coordinator, I've witnessed the profound impact this position has had not only within the school where I work, but also across the broader community. Through this role, I've connected families with vital resources, helped create stronger foundations for success, and guided young minds toward brighter futures for the betterment of our city. We have seen firsthand how impactful these programs like LAYC's Community Schools Program can open doors for participants by exposing them to opportunities they might never have realized were available, such as college tours that go beyond academic enrichment and offer a window into new cities and culture some of our students wouldn't have experienced otherwise. In addition to these experiences, we are often tasked with providing basic needs for our families who are struggling, yet reduction in funding have made it increasingly difficult to sustain these efforts. Our programs rely heavily on OSSI grants, and over the years, budget cuts have challenged our ability to deliver essential resources, enrichment activities. Each reduction means fewer opportunities for students who depend on us and threatens the very functionality of our programs. While my team and I work tirelessly to fill gaps, continue our mission to help students thrive academically despite significant disparities has become extremely challenging. It is important to build community schools so that they become ingrained into DCPS, ultimately helping every school and supporting every student and family in need of similar services that these programs can provide. Our city should be investing in the potential of its people, not undermining it. By continuing to fund community schools, we uphold the commitment to strong, resilient Washington, D.C. I urge you to consider the far-reaching impact of these institutions and strengthen their budgets for the well-being of all. We ask that the D.C. Council work with OSSI and community partners to find a pathway for funding a model that we know has a great impact, especially when it is stable and well-funded. Community schools programs across the district are already making positive impact with minimal resources. It is important for the model to be fully ingrained in the culture of the school and leadership, data-driven and aligned with community's needs. With the investment in this model, LAYC believes that the community agencies and schools across the district can work together to make schools safer and more resourced, improving the lives of all stakeholders in the community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Armenta. Jessica Giles, who's virtual.
Greetings, Chairman Mendelson, members, and staff of the DC Council's Committee of the Whole. My name is Jessica Giles. I am a Ward 7 resident and the Executive Director of the DC Office of the Center for Strong Public Schools Action Fund. Let me start by saying all students can learn, and academic excellence must remain DC's North Star. Every public school, whether DCPS or public charter, must be held to high standards for all students, regardless of who they serve or where they are located. Achieving this requires a culture of open, transparent, and shared accountability for school improvement, where OSSI, PCSB, DCPS, public charter schools, students, educators, families, and elected officials all clearly understand what must improve, the plan to get there, and each person's responsibility in that work. When everyone knows the goals and everyone knows their role in achieving them, we can build the strong public schools our students deserve. My testimony today will focus on how to get there. Recently, DC celebrated its highest graduation rate in more than a decade. While it's important to acknowledge and appreciate that more seniors are entering an increasingly competitive, while it is important to celebrate this increase, we know that many graduating seniors are entering an increasingly competitive world with low math and English language arts proficiency skills, according to DC CAPE. The mayor and the DC Council have made research-backed investments in structural literacy training, high-impact tutoring, advanced technical centers, and much more. These investments have clearly helped drive the gains in literacy and math that district, rightfully so, touts today. Still, these statewide results hide serious concerns for specific student groups. For students who are economically disadvantaged or who fall into traditionally underserved groups, opportunity gaps have actually widened over time. We need a serious commitment to statewide intervention and turnaround to drive school improvement. As it relates to statewide testing, we urge OSSI to deliver actionable results to families within a month of the exam being administered, like at least 6 other states throughout the country already do. In terms of Accelerate DC, we applaud the DC Council for passing the School Improvement Act of 2023 and for OSSI making the right shift in its model with the Accelerate DC plan. To further transparency, predictability, and efficiency, we urge OSSI to create a public school improvement progress dashboard. This dashboard should provide clear and easy to understand metrics outlining whether a school is on track or off track with its school improvement plans. Immediately ensure all school improvement plans are publicly available. Several are not online. Outline specific actions a school should take when they receive support and additional funding, yet remains in the same designation across multiple cycles, with a clear escalation ladder. Consider moving toward a single funding application for all state and federal local funding, including school improvement funds like Louisiana's Super App, as is outlined multiple times in the report and as schools continuously say, there are burdens with regards to having multiple applications, and we should be working towards streamlining work. I still have questions about whether OSSI has the staffing it needs to implement the robust interventions it calls for, and whether the lighter touch support that OSSI will provide targeted support improvement schools is sufficient. In conclusion, DC needs open, transparent, and shared accountability for school improvement and take the necessary steps to realize meaningful outcomes for all students. DC can lead the nation in academic excellence and opportunity, and we look forward to partnering to ensure our city delivers strong public schools for every student. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Giles. Laura Meistus, I believe, is not here. Patricia Stamper, I believe, is not here. Tara Brown, I believe, is not here. Meredith Anderson.
Yes. All right. Greetings, Chairman Mendelson and members of the Committee of the Whole. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this afternoon about school improvement in the district. My name is Dr. Meredith Anderson, and I'm a proud parent and Ward 5 resident in the District of Columbia. My kids attend school in the district as well, one of which is a DC public school. I am also a Ward 5 PLE board member with PAVE, Parents Amplifying Voices in Education. Today, you will hear from my fellow PAVE leaders and me about the importance of replicating tactics that we know work in order for schools to improve. Empower K-12's Bold School Report clearly lays out what is working in DC schools. Bold schools prioritize intentional data review. We cannot address inequities and provide high-quality interventions for students until we know where the opportunity gaps lie. These leaders and teachers in Bold schools intentionally review data to ensure students, namely our most vulnerable students, are not slipping through the cracks. As an education researcher and parent, data review and transparency were important factors in choosing a school for my children. Given the critical importance of data in our school system, we should ensure the Office of Education through Employment Pathways is funded in the FY27 budget. The Education through Employment data system will highlight equity gaps and ensure policies and interventions address the needs of historically marginalized communities. The data can help us determine what is working in schools and understand post-graduation outcomes. I've had the opportunity to contribute during the early stages of the Maryland longitudinal data system several years ago, so I understand the significance of these systems to help connect the dots between K-12, college, and career. Moreover, the ESTEP office produces important insights like those in the DC Alumni Early Career Outcomes Survey, which found racial disparities in post-secondary outcomes and several findings related to overall well-being post-graduation. Additionally, robust data systems and reports through the ETEP office helps ensure that data are accessible to families, schools, and policymakers. Though I'm an education researcher, I understand there are intangibles only experienced by going into the schools. I visited many of the Bold schools last year and saw firsthand the care and excitement from the administrators and teachers. I observed the small group instruction, the trust but verified leadership, and more importantly, I could sense the joy from students. With my own child, I've seen firsthand the bold leadership coupled with high expectations that allows my child to thrive academically, socially, and emotionally. The work Empower K-12 does surrounding data reminds us how critical data is. To continue to improve the district, we must continue to support all of the different entities that make data accessible, especially the Office of Education through Employment Pathways. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I look forward to answering any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Kiana Lamont.
Good evening, Councilman and Committee of the Whole. My name is Quiana Lamont. I am a proud paid parent leader of Ward 7, whose children attend DC public schools. I speak not just for my children, but for all families in DC who wants to see every student, especially our priority students, designated as at risk, reach their full potential. As we think about school improvement across the district, we must look at what's working well. Earlier this year, Empower K-12 released its Bold School reports, showing us that schools that are exceeding expectation. We must learn from what those Bold schools are doing and replicate the work across the district. This success of our Bold schools show us that this is not just hope, but reality that is currently being achieved in our city. Bold schools are the proof points that high achievement is possible for all students, including those who are economically disadvantaged and students of color. Their results are dramatic. Both schools have proficiency rates that are at least 10% point higher than other DC schools serving similar students population. Crucially, since the pandemic, these schools have been improving students' achievement at a rate that is 3 to 4 times faster than DC average. This is not luck, it's results of intentional positive practice that deserve to be understood and scaled across DC. First, they prioritize building a strong community and deep relationship. They treat their school as a tight-knit family where students, staff, and caregivers know and support each other. The cultural and mature respect of high expectation foundation to success. We need to move beyond simply celebrating both schools and actively work to implement their core practice citywide. I urge you to look closely at these two additional essential strategies. Educators use daily quantitative and qualitative data to refine instructions. They can catch students who are struggling before they fall behind, which is why their achievement rates for at-risk students are nearly double citywide average. Both schools trust their teachers and provide protective time for coaching, collaboration, and professional development. This builds capacity for our educators to deliver the high quality target instructions that is closing the achievement gap. My ask is simple. We must invest in replicating both schools' bright spots. I urge the councilman to dive deep into both schools' report and to learn more about what is working to support dedicated funding for professional development dedicated to representing strategies we know work, including incorporating data into all schools and building strong relationship with students and their families. Thank you for your opportunity to testify today.
Thank you, Ms. Lamont. Sharon Boone Ruffin. Sharon Boone Ruffin.
Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson and members of the DC Council. I'm Sean Boone Ruffin, a Ward 8 resident and a paid Ward 8 and citywide PLE board member. I'm also a parent of a Dunbar Senior High Engineering Academy and Learn DC Public Charter Academy students. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm excited to share my perspective as both a parent and an educator on the importance of school improvement and how replicating the techniques implemented at both schools across the district can help all schools to improve. A key part of improving our schools is making sure that parents, teachers, staff, community stakeholders all understand how to interpret the data being shared with them about student progress. DC Both Schools represents a powerful success story. These are schools serving high need at-risk populations, often with high percentages of economically disadvantaged, English language learners, special education students, and yet they significantly outperform expectations. In 2025, Bold Performance Schools had proficiency rates 19.5%, which were higher than the comparable schools serving similar demographics. Moreover, since the pandemic, both schools have shown academic recovery at a pace 3 to 4 times faster than the district average. For economically disadvantaged students, this accelerated growth is particularly important, where their improvement is combined with both reading and math proficiency, nearly double the citywide rate for that group. These gains come not by accident, but because both schools use strategic data, monitoring student progress, adjusting support quickly with small group instruction, extending the learning, and emphasizing family engagement. But here's the critical barrier. Many schools across the district lack the capacity among parents, educators, staff, and community stakeholders to interpret and act on the available data. Even when data exists without training and guidance, trends in proficiency across general education, English language learners, special education, and economically disadvantaged students subgroups can go unnoticed. That means interventions often remain reactive rather than intentional and equity driven. To address this gap, I urged OSSI to create a dedicated data literacy and stakeholder support unit. This unit would help train parents, teachers, and school staff and community stakeholders on how to read student performance data, provide tools that will break down outcomes by subgroup so stakeholders can see the student population and improve them, support schools in using the data design and for social emotional and other tiered systems. By doing this, we replicate the conditions that have led both schools to outperform expectations and make those conditions available to all DC schools. When everybody works together, we can become one group and be successful in raising the bar even higher. Thank you for your time, and I hope to hear back from you. Have a great one.
Thank you, Ms. Boonruff. And Tanisha Holder, I believe is online.
Yes, I am here. Good evening, DC Council members and all parties in attendance. My name is Tanisha Holder, and I'm an educator from Ward 4. I have taught, worked, and lived in Ward 7 and 8. I choose to speak about community schools because I've seen firsthand their potential to change outcomes for families east of the river, while also reimagining what education can look like across the nation's capital. As a teacher, I've served students at Malcolm X Elementary, Seed Public Charter School, and the Maya Angelou Juvenile Detention Center. Many of my students came from Ward 7 and 8. I also worked at So Others Might Eat, where I supported families navigating instability and advocated alongside parents for their children's needs. Some of the students I taught were later unalived due to gun violence, untreated mental health issues, and missed early interventions. I've even taught students who, while incarcerated, had taken the lives of students I previously taught in other schools. Experiencing tragedy from both sides leaves a mark, especially knowing that by age 9 or 3rd grade, a child's long-term trajectory is often already predicted. I am tired of losing students to the system. In education, we talk about the partnership between home and school, but in communities with high need, that equation must also include the community itself. At a time when federal education structures are uncertain, we must strengthen alternative supports for families in Ward 7 and 8 and scale what works across the nation's capital. That's why I'm advocating for expanding the community school model, aligned with the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, and rooted in multi-tiered supports to build holistic, community-anchored solutions. DCPS data shows the urgency. In Ward 7 and 8, poverty hovers around 20%. Fewer than 1 in 5 residents hold a bachelor's degree, and homicides increased more steeply during 2020 to 2021 than in more affluent wards. 8 and 9-year-olds do not choose disengagement. They inherit barriers shaped by generational trauma and limited access to resources. It then becomes the district's responsibility to provide remediation and stability through strong feeder patterns, community schools, and coordinated supports. The community school model directly aligns with 7 Sustainable Development Goals, which are quality education, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, reduced inequalities in sustainable cities, responsible consumption, and peace, justice, and strong institutions. These goals reflect what connected schools already do: provide multi-generational support, address food insecurity, strengthen safety interventions, and build a future-ready workforce. To move from isolated successes to systemic transformation, we must scale and fund this model consistently. That means investing $2.4 million per year for the next 4 years to bring 8 new community schools online annually, funding OSSI's program at the same level as DCPS, and modeling OSSI's approach directly on DCPS's effective framework. Strengthening and expanding connected schools positions DC as a national leader in equity-driven, community-rooted public education and offers families a real pathway out of poverty through connected, resilient, and well-resourced schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holder. Elizabeth Weiss.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Elizabeth Weiss, and I'm a parent and the math instructional coach at Brown Education Campus in the Carver-Langston neighborhood. I also serve as our school's teacher liaison for the family and community engagement. I'm here today in strong support of expanding community schools and ensuring that both DCPS and OSSI and the OSSI programs are funded at the full $250,000 per school. Brown is already functioning as a community school in every way that matters, just without the funding, staffing, or infrastructure that Maryland has built through their Blueprint for the Future. In Maryland, 621 schools, over 40% of the entire state, with a concrete plan to achieve 100%, are designated and funded community schools. Each receives a full-time coordinator, a full-time health provider, and predictable wraparound funding that grows over time. DC, by contrast, has under 40 community schools total. Brown would have been eligible under Maryland's model years ago. In the absence of that system, Brown educators fill the gap between shrinking federal safety nets and the very real needs our families bring to school every day. Brown has one of the largest multilingual learner populations in DCPS, and newcomer enrollment is growing. To support families, we have built and maintained a constantly updated list of immigrant resources, are building a food and baby supply pantry, and support families with winter clothing, medical navigation, and baby supply, and translation, much of it funded out of our own pockets. Our principal personally purchases food for families because hunger cannot wait for reimbursement cycles. We have washers and dryers inside the school, and administrators routinely wash students' clothes themselves during the day, time that should be spent supporting instruction and academics. And increasingly, our staff have taken on transportation work, organizing carpools for students who live far across the city, texting families at 6 a.m. to coordinate drivers, and sometimes physically picking up students ourselves. These are families who not only lack stable transportation, but many are afraid to travel across the city due to immigration status and unfamiliarity with new neighborhoods or past experiences with policing and public systems. Yet they come to Brown because we have created the one thing every newcomer family tells us they need most: a safe, welcoming community where their language, culture, and humanity are honored. Families travel long distances not only for the practical supports we provide, but because Brown is a community school in the truest sense, an affirming, dependable place for families new to this country or families struggling with housing instability, food insecurity, trauma, or the chronic stress of navigating systems. They come across the city because they trust us, and that trust is sacred, but it should not depend entirely on unpaid labor and heroic effort from educators. We cannot keep relying on teachers to be the social safety net. We cannot keep expecting principals to choose between observing classrooms and washing laundry. And we cannot keep losing students to absenteeism because transportation and basic needs are not funded roles. I urge the council to schedule a markup and to vote, fund 8 new community schools per year, raise OSSI's funding to match DCPS's $250,000 per school, and create a clear eligibility pathways so schools like Brown, where the need is undeniable, can receive coordinated, sustainable support. Thank you for your time and your commitment to our school communities.
Thank you, Ms. Weiss. Devon Montgomery.
Good evening, Chairperson Mendelson and council members. My name is Devon Montgomery, and I am the Dean of Students at Harmony DC Public Charter School, an elementary school in Ward 5, also a Ward 1 community member and an Empower Ed Fellow. Over the past 15 years, I have seen firsthand the value of supporting scholars and their families as an educator throughout the district. I am here today to support expanding community schools, to support schools that are experiencing significant levels of instability in the current policy landscape. The council must schedule a markup and vote. At Harmony DC Public Charter School, we would benefit from having access to a community schools coordinator because our leadership team is small but mighty. As a one-school LEA, we often have to do more with less. We have a commitment to a holistic approach to working with our scholars where we center fostering lasting relationships with our families and our scholars. Our leadership team is open to support efforts that reach the needs of all of our scholars, but with our day-to-day functionality, we often lack the capacity, resources, and access to fully utilize all possible resources available to us. We utilize restorative practices and have recently been hindered in our ability to support the mental health of many scholars when we lost our DBH clinician due to shifts in funding. Sustained funding would allow us to connect more of our scholars and families with the proactive tools to meet their needs. Maryland's blueprint for the future is working to make every public school into a community school by integrating health, mental health, and social services into schools. Our neighbors in the Beltway are outpacing our ability to best support our scholars and families. Currently, 96% of Baltimore's public schools are community schools. Additionally, 65% of PG County schools are also community schools. And out of DC's 252 schools, slightly under 40 of them are community schools. So that comes to about 15%. According to the Learning Policy Institute, from around 2021 to present day, California established the largest state-level community schools initiative in the country by investing $4.1 billion into their community school partnership. That serviced around 2,500 high-need schools, and they were able to have improve test scores, reduce chronic absenteeism, reduce suspension rates, and have large gains for historically underserved populations. Boosting our community schools' capacity in the district would have similar outcomes for our scholars and families. In order to develop a landscape where all schools within the district become community schools, the council should allocate $2.4 million over the next 4 years to actualize 8 new schools a year at $300,000 a school. Fund OSSE's and DCPS's community school programs at the same level. Develop some kind of task force or some kind of connective tissue to bring both efforts from DCPS and charters together in their community school efforts, and model OSSE's program more closely on DCPS's effective model that includes a coordinator within their model.
Mr. Montgomery, you're over your time, but I do have your statement, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chandler Denard.
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Chandler Dennard, and I currently teach music education at Kimball Elementary School in Ward 7. I've been teaching for the past 25 years and the last 10 years being at Kimball. Being at Kimball, I've been able to witness firsthand many of things, great things a community school can offer. One thing that we offer as a community school is a food pantry. Many of our parents use this pantry to help supplement their food resources as grocery prices continue to climb. Imagine a few weeks ago when SNAP benefits were going to be cut. Our food pantry was ready and willing to step up to the plate. We also have a washer and dryer at our school. Many times during the winter, students come to school with jackets that need to be washed and cleaned. We now have the resources to do that at our school. We have also been able to hire someone whose sole purpose is to reach out and to connect with community and community members. All of these things combined help our teachers by taking little bits and pieces off of our teachers' plates. Schools are quickly becoming resource hubs for the community, whether we want them to or not. So why not get ahead of the game and expand the community schools model? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dennard. Zach Wilson. And thank you for being here.
No problem. Good afternoon, all. My name is Zach Wilson. I'm a 10th grade English and Human Geography teacher at Columbia Heights Education Campus. I'm with Empower Ed. And I think that we all remember how this summer when the mayor took forever to release her fiscal year 26 budget, and then it was revealed to us in the final hour that she had slashed all these important social programs in June that y'all had to vote to reinstate. So just picture me and my friends in our blue t-shirts sitting in front of the council room, each raising up letters that collectively spelled fund community schools. I would be intentional about thanking all of you guys for listening to us and for restoring the budget for community schools. Until this year, Bell High School, where I teach, was a connected school. Even though we're now funding these programs out of pocket, your support on council allowed us to build programs that offered students and families an unprecedented level of support. We voted to restore the budget for community schools. You ensured that families would still be able to access food pantries on Fridays to bring home fresh fruits, vegetables, diapers, and baby formula. This structure ensured that our students would still be able to access dental and medical appointments at our school campus, and that we'd be continuing to fund arts and sports programs in our building after school run by community groups. And my favorite thing y'all ensured, and I talk about this to anyone who will listen, is that every single one of our students would be able to access vision tests and be given a free pair of glasses or a supply of contact lenses. But I tell y'all that I had so many students who used to be belligerent or disengaged who suddenly bloomed into readers or writers because of this one single policy change. I am not exaggerating. I was shocked by how many of my students couldn't see, by how many of them were able to thrive once the city began providing them with the basics they need to be successful. So think of today as part 2 of our nonprofit's direct action in organizing our community schools, because we aren't done yet. You guys have heard all day like how PG County has 65% of schools are community schools, and Baltimore Public School has 96% of public schools which are community schools. So DC is still behind the curve with just 15% of our schools, under 40 of our 252 public schools being OSSE or DCPS connected schools. Additionally, at Empower Ed, we want to address the lack of clarity and accountability in the process by which that schools are selected to be funded in the first place. We want to make sure that the schools that are neediest, where you have the most students living in poverty, are the ones that are being selected to be part of this program. We also want to ensure that, as people have already said, that we're making sure that OSSE is funding the community schools to the extent that DCPS is, right? Every school deserves $250K, not just $160. Especially with understanding that there could be impending cuts, increasing funding for schools to meet social needs is crucial. There are many education items that are important, Investing in community schools are investing in healthcare, nutrition, and food security, and fighting truancy and parental neglect, and providing arts, sports, and enrichment programs to the youth. I would argue this is the most important education item that you guys can fund, and you need to do it more aggressively than we have been previously. Thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I have a total of 2 questions, maybe not questions. Several of you commented. I'm looking at, for example, the statement from Mr. Montgomery. The council must schedule a markup and vote. This is an oversight hearing. There is no legislation before us right now. Community schools funding is something we dealt with in the budget in July. It's something that we will deal with when we get the budget in April. And between now and then, or between then meaning July and then meaning next April, we have nothing to mark up, to schedule, or to vote. The other thing is, I wanted to ask Mr. Armenta, and thank you for being here in person. You mentioned reductions in funding. Now, you're with LAYC, so you're one of the OSSI grant recipients. Can you be more specific about reductions in funding?
Yeah, specifically funding to support part-time placement of on-site therapists, moving towards like referrals for LAYC. We aren't able to provide that direct access for students. We no longer have a food and nutrition coordinator, which has made it difficult to provide.
Is that because the OSSI grant has been reduced over time?
Yes.
Do you know how much? Can you speak to that?
I unfortunately do not know. I have just come into the role in February.
Okay, but so your understanding is that the OSSI grant was greater last year or a couple of years ago?
When the grant initially was funded, I
That's
know
right,
it
it's
was much larger.
cohorts.
I'm sorry.
It's cohorts, so you get funded on like a 3-year basis.
Yes, and I believe that we've had multiple cohorts. So I'm unsure of how many we've had.
Okay, but so between the last cohort and the current cohort, there was a reduction. Within the current cohort, the funding has been the same?
I'm not sure, but I can provide an answer with that through email.
If you would.
Yes.
Okay, I don't have any other questions for you all. Thank you, both of you, for being here in person. You get gold stars. Thank you, the rest of you, for your testimony. And we're going to continue. I believe the rest of the public witnesses are all online. Or maybe they're not. Cesarina Santana, Marlena Mitchell, Sistel Moe, Zari Lewis, Ibrahim Bannister, Dee Duval, Samantha Robinson, Faith Arthur, Robin Harper, Fabian Gill. Well, none of those folks were here. I'll give it a second, see if any of them reappear.
No, they had to leave. Okay.
Then that's going to conclude the public testimony. We're going to turn to the government. We have Elizabeth Ross, Assistant. Did I forget something? Elizabeth Ross, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, Office of the State Superintendent of Education, and Paige Hoffman, who's Chief Office of School Improvement and Supports at the District of Columbia Public Schools. Thought maybe you're putting Abe under the table. Who's first? My preference is whoever goes first. All right.
Good evening, Chairman Mendelson, members of the Committee of the Whole, and staff. My name is Elizabeth Ross. I am proud to lead the Office of the State Superintendent of Education's Division of Teaching and Learning, which houses our school improvement efforts. I am pleased to be with you today to discuss the status of our school improvement work in the district and to be joined by my colleague, Assistant Superintendent Nikki Stewart, who leads our Division of Strategic Funding for School Quality, which administers our Community Schools Incentive Initiative grant program. As the district's state educational agency, OSSI bears primary responsibility for supporting DC local educational agencies in implementing federal education laws. Chief among these laws is the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, as amended. Under the ESEA, each state is required to develop a plan that, alongside other requirements, establishes a system to meaningfully differentiate all public schools in the state. This system of meaningful differentiation or accountability must include measures of student academic achievement and student growth in math and English language arts, student progress in achieving English language proficiency, graduation rates, and at least one valid, reliable, and comparable measure of school quality or student success. The district's ESEA state plan, which was most recently amended in June 2023, sets forth DC's accountability system. ESEA requires states to use this system to determine the lowest performing 5% of schools and designate them to receive comprehensive support and improvement from the SEA, as well as federal funding. It also directs SEAs to identify high schools with low graduation rates and schools where a student group is in the lowest performing 5% of schools. Alongside the ESEA requirements for school improvement, OSSI is charged with implementing the School Improvement Amendment Act of 2023. In September of 2024, consistent with the requirements of this act, OSSI set forth a bold vision for school improvement for DC schools: Accelerate DC. Under this framework, OSSI supports the lowest performing schools with clear expectations, access to federal funding, planning and supports, aligned resources, and strong collaboration and partnership. This work is structured to ensure that schools in improvement status successfully implement well-designed school improvement plans focused on targeted domains. Ultimately, this work is designed to improve learning outcomes for students in designated schools. The Accelerate DC framework is grounded in 5 key research-backed domains: transformational leadership, talent development, instructional excellence, a strong school climate, and organizational health. In December of 2024, OSSI designated DC's lowest performing schools for the first year of a 3-year cycle, and we are actively working with each of the 10 schools currently in improvement status to implement and refine plans to improve student performance. OSSI, DC LEAs, and DC schools in improvement status are on track in implementing local and federal requirements. Following the most recent designation of schools for comprehensive support and improvement in 2024, all designated schools developed OSSI-approved school improvement plans during the 24-25 school year. Currently, OSSI is working with LEA and school leaders to align school budgets to the goals established in their school improvement plans. In addition, OSSI is making robust supports available to schools in improvement status. Guided by research that demonstrates the critical importance of student attendance in advancing academic outcomes, OSSI is providing support to increase student attendance through a targeted community of practice and working closely with a philanthropic funder to facilitate relational home visits for schools in improvement status. Further, OSSI secured and is dedicating philanthropic funding for high-impact tutoring at schools in improvement status. High-impact tutoring is an evidence-based intervention that is countering historical inequities in accessing additional academic supports. We have also partnered with Johns Hopkins University to understand the effectiveness of this work. We look forward to receiving and learning from this evaluation by the end of this fiscal year. This private gift of more than $500,000 is enabling us to deepen the impact of local funding in high-impact tutoring and helping to ensure that all schools in improvement status are able to leverage one of the most impactful interventions for improving student academic achievement and attendance. Finally, OSSI is conducting beginning of year monitoring visits to support the implementation of all school improvement plans. These visits serve as an important opportunity for school leadership teams to share challenges and successes as they work to continuously improve school experiences and student outcomes. OSSI's most immediate priority in this space remains ensuring that we have the right team in place. We are working diligently to hire for 3 roles to support this work and anticipate having a new school improvement manager, as well as 2 school improvement specialists on board our OSSI team by the end of next month. While we work to fill these roles, we are continuing to support our schools in improvement status and have already begun preparing for our mid-year monitoring by working with schools to identify the key indicators on which to make progress prior to our next visit. We welcome council members to join us on our mid-year monitoring visits. You can meet the school leadership teams implementing school improvement plans and personally witness evidence-based interventions that schools are using to make progress, such as our high-impact tutoring. Alongside our school improvement work, OSSI has continued to administer other aligned programming, such as our Community Schools Incentive Initiative grants, 21st Century Community Learning Centers grants, and School Climate Micro grants, and we frequently assign preference points in grant competitions for schools designated for improvement. As we move forward with implementing Accelerate DC, OSSI will leverage the full range of tools available to us to encourage LEAs to integrate best practices to improve school quality. Under Accelerate DC and aligned programming, our city is uniting under a common understanding of the levers that drive school improvement and ultimately success. I am confident that with sustained leadership and commitment from district leaders, we will continue to improve DC schools so that all students can thrive. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this important conversation. I'm pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Ms. Hoffman.
Good evening, Chairman Mendelson and council members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I am Paige Hoffman, the Chief of the Office of School Improvement and Supports for DC Public Schools. DCPS has identified 3 strategic priorities that guide our work with schools and communities. We want to ensure that students are succeeding academically, feel connected to their school, and are prepared for what's next. Today, I will share 3 critical approaches to advance these priorities: our multi-tiered system of supports, our school improvement strategy, and connected schools. Over the past few years, through an intentional pilot and expansion, DCPS identified a set of practices that create the best environment for ensuring student learning. These 5 power practices include things like ensuring consistent expectations, norms and routines for student behavior, ensuring that there are structures that support positive relationships between students and adults, and MTSS. While these practices began in a set of pilot schools, they are now expectations across our entire system. As you may recall, a few leaders actually spoke to this during the Standout Schools Roundtable you all held last month. Let's start, though, by digging into multi-tiered systems of supports, a topic that got a lot of attention today, also known as MTSS. MTSS is a framework meant to support students to fulfill their potential socially, emotionally, and academically. Successful models include tiers of instructional and other kinds of support so that all students can make progress by getting the kind of education that meets their needs. When we think about MTSS, we are looking for 3 indicators of success. Are school teams collaborating to provide supports for the whole child, not just in one area like academics or behavior? Second, are the supports in place high quality and grounded in research? And third, is student progress being monitored so that teams can make informed decisions about what to do next? Having a shared understanding of these criteria across the system is critical and fundamental to student success. At the student level, we also continue to provide the Panorama Survey twice per school year to take a landscape view of student experiences. We saw our highest response rate and belonging score in Panorama ever last spring. We've also developed a tool that schools use monthly or more frequently to check in with students to understand how they are feeling and experiencing school. For the first time, we now have data from more than 25,000 check-ins across the district with students during the first weeks of school. This allows educators to act proactively and also see who needs additional support before concerns become crises. I now want to transition to talking about our school improvement work. While our power practices support students throughout all DCPS schools, our school improvement efforts focus on a specific group of schools in need of additional support. These schools include those designated under the Every Student Succeeds Act, also known as ESSA, for comprehensive, intensive, or monitored improvement support. These schools face the greatest challenges, and we provide tailored interventions to accelerate progress. Every designated school develops a school improvement plan aligned with ESSA requirements and DCPS priorities, integrating academic, evidence-based strategies, our safety and belonging priorities, and a commitment to preparing students for key transitions. Schools engage in data-driven cycles, setting goals, monitoring progress, and adjusting strategies to meet federal and local accountability standards. DCPS works closely with OSSI on the creation and implementation of these plans. Recent cycles have helped schools exit designation status and improve student outcomes. Today, we have half as many schools designated for comprehensive support and improvement as we did in 2018 when this work began. Lastly, I want to turn to connected schools. At DCPS, our model of the full-service community school is what we call a connected school. We chose this name intentionally because we want to emphasize the connection between our schools, community partners, students, and families. Connected schools are schools that partner with the community to provide an integrated approach to academics, health, and social services, youth and community development, and community engagement. Connected schools serve as neighborhood hubs that intentionally weave together academic, social, emotional support, and community resources so students and families can thrive. Each connected school has a dedicated manager who serves as a school leader over implementation of the model. They're developing the school-wide strategies for family relationship building and intentional partner coordination. This manager is also a part of the school-based leadership team and works closely with the principal and other leaders in the building. In school year 24-25, Connected Schools served nearly 5,000 students through ongoing partner-led programming. Students receive ongoing services and have a higher rate of attendance than those who do not. That's what the research tells us. For every dollar invested in our connected schools, DCPS receives over $5 of in-kind services and resources, amplifying the impact of public funds. Currently, 18 schools have adopted this model, which takes a whole child, whole school, whole community approach. This work strengthens trust and belonging while mitigating challenges that interfere with learning. As you heard earlier today, Kimball Elementary School is one such connected school. At Kimball, Mr. Christmas, the Connected Schools manager, runs a food pantry for families, partners with Martha's Table on a monthly fresh produce market, and works closely with organizations that provide tutoring, nutrition education, athletic opportunities, and theatrical experiences. With the appropriate support and preparation to help them reach their full potential, our students will graduate with the knowledge and skills they need to thrive in post-secondary education, the workforce, and life. Initiatives like our multi-tiered system of supports, school improvement efforts, and connected schools all help students succeed academically while being connected to their school. Thank you for continuing to support these efforts and for the opportunity to speak about them today. I look forward to your questions.
I'm going to start with a question that reveals some of my ignorance. So, Ms. Ross, you testified about, you made a reference to the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and it's under ASSIA?
Thank you so much. Are you asking a clarifying question about the ESEA versus the ESSA?
Yeah, I am.
It's a great question. So the authorizing legislation for this program is the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965. That program, or excuse me, that law has been repeatedly reauthorized. The most recent reauthorization was in 2015 as the Every Student Succeeds Act. However, it is the same piece of legislation. And so the technical term of the law is the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 as amended. The amended title of the ESEA is the Every Student Succeeds Act, and that reauthorization was in 2015.
Okay, so you're both talking about the same law.
Correct.
So many initials. I have a lot of questions, but I'm not quite sure where to begin. Ms. Hoffman, you mentioned serving 5,000 students. How do you get to 5,000? I would have thought it would have been more. Is that the enrollment of the 18 schools?
Yes, it covers the enrollment across the schools that are participating in the program.
Okay. That was not one of my most important questions.
Sorry, and it covers enrollment in ongoing partner-led programming. So one of the things that we think is really important to differentiate with Connected Schools is that we don't necessarily count a one-time backpack offering as an ongoing partner-led programming. We think it's incredibly important that students are engaged in ongoing partner-led programming because that's what the research tells us is what creates the relationship that leverages a sense of belonging. So the 5,000 is the students who are enrolled in ongoing partner programming, although more students at the broader school community benefit from the services.
Or to put it another way, a subset of the total enrollment at these schools is participating in ongoing.
Partner-led programming. I like your reframe.
Okay. Well, why not all the students?
So I think that there are a couple of things at place here. One is we do tier supports within a Connected School. It's really important that we think about what are the needs that different students are bringing and how can we make sure that they're connected to a partner that serves them. All students might be able to benefit or would benefit from things like access to laundry service, the food pantry, but again, those are not ongoing partner-led programming. Ongoing partner-led programming is tiered, like through our MTSS strategy. The Connected Schools manager sits on the MTSS team, and so they make sure that students who need the most supports, whether they're academic or through mentoring, get connected to that partner-led programming. And when we launch Connected Schools, one of the things that's crucial for us is to do an assessment of the partners that are in place at the building. So what are we hearing from students, from teachers, from families about what the needs are? What are the partners that are available at the school? And how might we facilitate more partners if necessary to make sure that the needs of the school community are met?
So to go back to the beginning of your answer, so it's the students who have the greatest needs are the ones who are enrolled in the ongoing partnership programs.
Yep. And it might be an academic programming if that's where the need is. We've been really excited to see some of our Connected Schools managers, for instance, support the implementation of the of HIT tutoring, for instance. Or it might be students who, through their Panorama data, are showing us that they have a lower sense of belonging. And when we dig into that further, we see that they might say, hey, I don't feel like I have good peer-to-peer respect. So we might group those students together in a lunch bunch so that they can build relationships with peers. They might indicate that they don't have access to a trusted adult, so we'd find an adult mentoring program. So it's really driven by what students are telling us that they need and what adults are also seeing.
So you have 18 schools.
We have 18 schools.
Okay,
yeah.
why not 30?
One of the things that we think is incredibly important for the Connected Schools model is to make sure, and this is what the evidence tells us as well, that there are certain readiness criteria that are in place. When we look at Connected Schools, we want to make sure that there are a couple of characteristics. One, we look at the need of the school. So many of the indicators that we heard folks talk about earlier today as it relates to at-risk status, McKinney-Vento status, things like that.
Sure, I'm going to interrupt a little bit, but like Empower Ed is saying, every school should be a connected school. That would mean without regard to the kind of criteria you're just going over. But surely there are 30 schools where if you're focusing on schools with a high at-risk population, 30 schools. So why not more than 18?
So one of the things that we do is we work really closely with school leaders to see who wants to raise their hand to also engage. I think you heard today about the vast array of community school work that's happening across the district. And we believe that there are a number of different models that might work for different schools. For connected schools to be effective, we do believe that there are traits within the school leadership team. There needs to be a deep commitment to working and partnering with families and community partnerships. We need to make sure there are strong MTSS systems that are also in place, because one of the things that's crucial to this work is the accountability structures that come along with it. And so we are doing a lot of work. And I think when we talk about system level expansion, the thing that is within our locus of control is making sure that we are leading with evidence-based practices. That means that when we are bringing people into the cohort, we know what the strong foundation is so that we're able to make sure that we're going to get the accountability outcomes that we expect to see from this work.
I'm going to rephrase that. So what I'm hearing is that a school has to want to participate, and you have to evaluate that that school has a good foundation to participate.
Yes, and I think that one of the things that we've done since we've launched the work has been very intentional about working with evaluation partners so that we're clear on what that criteria is, and also that we're codifying it. So for the first time ever through our Power Practices assessment, we actually have data on how all 117 schools are implementing right now in this moment the practices that show us school readiness conditions. That's incredibly important for us because it also allows us to think about, as a district, what are the foundational supports and resources that we can be building upon should more schools, raise their hand to say, hey, we do want to opt into connected schools.
So were there only 18 schools that raised their hand, figuratively speaking?
Yeah, these are the 18 schools that have made the deep commitment to join the cohort. We have never turned away a school that, once we've talked through the readiness conditions, has said we want to be a connected school. So we're not gatekeeping in that way.
Well, that's an important answer here. Yeah. Okay, so you haven't turned a school away. How much does it cost you per school?
I'm so happy that you asked this question to give me the opportunity to talk a little bit about the funding, because I know that that has been a hot topic. So a subset of our schools, we wrote an application in collaboration with them to receive a full service community school grant. That's a grant that's run with the Department of Education, by the Department of Education. That grant covers 5 years, and each year it's $250,000. So I think that is where that number comes from. That money goes towards personnel, non-personnel, and it also goes towards the evaluation costs. So when we had the opportunity to meet with some of your staffers, we shared some of the research that we've seen recently from JHU and AIR, and all of that comes from that grant.
This is a Department of Education grant?
This is the Department of Education Full Service Community Schools grant.
Mm-hmm.
We also leverage federal funds through the investment in schools. A number of our comprehensive support and improvement schools have leveraged some of the funding that they receive for that to implement connected schools. Another way that we fund it has been through local funds and Medicaid, or the local school budget. The personnel associated, the average cost of a connected schools manager is $148,000. From there,
everything including fringe?
For personnel. From there, schools typically receive either $20,000 to $70,000, depending on what existing partners they have in place. You heard earlier today that Kimball came to the table with a lot of things already in place. They're funded through the Full Service Community School Grant, but there are other schools that have been doing this work for a while that have other partners at the table. And so they might already be using other funds to support that, but there's typically $20,000 to $70,000, depending on the size of the school, the needs that come out of community mapping, and the partners that are available and any fees associated with them.
So I wrote down 75, and I didn't hear you correctly. You said between 20 and 70.
And 70 in non-personnel funds. And that could go towards things like partnerships, the establishment of a food pantry, before and after care, mental health services. It really is grounded in what the community needs.
So the Department of Education grant is $250,000 per school.
Per school over 5, or it's half of that. It's, yes, it's $250 per school. Yes.
And that pays the $148,000 for the manager,
yep,
the up to $70,000 for MPS.
Mm-hmm. And as well as evaluation of the services. So we partner with evaluators as part of the grant requirements. So Hopkins or that sort of thing.
Which is not part of the $70,000 NPS.
Not for a non-full service community school grant.
All right, don't confuse me.
I know, I'm sorry, sir.
So
when we have a federal Department of Education grant, they typically write into the grant an evaluation component.
Sure, and then they fire everybody, so there's nobody to read the evaluation. So does the school get 250,000 or do they get most of it and you hold back a little bit for like to pay for the evaluation?
The school gets most of the funding, and then we will centrally, because the evaluation covers multiple schools, we would hold that contract for them.
Okay. So that grant started when?
We have 2 full-service community school grants that are in place right now. We've had one before that started in, I believe, 2018. We received one.
Oh, that's the cohorts.
Yeah, those are the cohorts.
No, OSSE's got these cohorts.
OSSE has separate cohorts, but we've received a number of full-service community school grants over the year. The current full-service community school grants that we have from the Department of Education started in fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23.
And they're
5-year grants.
5-year grants. So 22 and 23. So what happens in 27 and 28?
Sustainability is a really important question and conversation that we always are engaging with school communities with from the beginning. We've been excited to see schools continue to build this work into their local budgets and are in constant conversation with them about how to make sure that the elements of the work that are important are maintained after the grant.
I didn't follow that at all. So Principal Smith, just to make up a name, he's got a budget for the current year. He's soon going to be thinking about his budget for next year. He's not going to be thinking about how he can incorporate $250,000 into his FY27 budget.
So I think school leaders do, before we ever apply for a grant with a school, we do have conversations about what the lifetime of the grant is so that it's very clear. And we also talk about ways that the grant would need to be maintained once the full service community school grant ends. And we have, for the schools that are in the cohort, heard indications from their school leaders that they do plan to build those positions into their local school budget once the grant has ended.
Okay, that's kind of a mystery to me, but that's all right. So you have 18 schools funded out of this grant, these 2 grants. So is there room for more schools out of those grants?
There are 4 schools that are funded by the full service community schools grants. Other schools are funded using their investment in schools grants, which is federal funds that schools that are in a comprehensive support and improvement status get from OSSE. And then we use local funds and Medicaid funds, not a separate grant. It's how the budget has prioritized investment in that work. Schools also will raise their hands, like we saw Garnett Patterson Stay and Jefferson do, and put the position on their local budgets.
So the 250,000 was only for the 4 schools?
For the full service community school grants, yes.
So of the other 14, the amount that they may be spending is less.
For the other schools, yes, it is the 148 for the position, and then it varies from $20,000 to $70,000 in non-personnel spending, depending on what programs or partnerships the school might need.
Not coming out of the grant.
Not coming out of there. This is all local or Medicaid funding.
So do I say Dr. Ross or do I say Ms. Ross?
Ms. Ross is perfect. Thank you.
How do you feel sitting next to the big time spender? Your grants are like 160,000?
Are you interested in learning more about our school improvement grants or about our communities and schools grants?
Communities and schools.
I'll defer to my colleague, Nikki Stewart.
Good evening. Yes, we have 2 different cohorts, as you know, of community schools grantees. And those grants, one cohort is funded at about 143,000, the other about 156,000 a year.
What were those dollars? 140?
Let me double check. $143,569.40 is one cohort.
I'm glad about the 40 cents.
And the other is $158,267.91. we get to these odd amounts because we're committed to dispersing all of the funds in the budget that we receive.
Okay, and the source of these dollars are local funds?
Yes, local funds is the community schools fund established.
I should know that because I put money in the budget, but if DCPS wants to pay a manager $148,000, how do you, I'm not sure how to ask this question. The OSSI grants are obviously not enough. So how are they enough? Or why that amount? Or why are we okay? Or what should it be?
Sure. So as you heard from some of the witnesses today, there is a real interest in us funding at least 8 grantees per cohort. And so we also heard another witness talk about a reduction in funds. When I joined the program in 2019, the grants were about $170,000 per grant. The budget was reduced slightly, and at that point, we were faced with a decision as to whether or not to continue to offer 8 grants per cohort, or to offer larger grants to a smaller number of grantees. And from what we heard from stakeholders, they really wanted us to offer 8 grants a year. And so we maintained the 8, and then that's why you're seeing these sort of reductions in program value as the budget has shifted over time.
So there's 16 schools.
Correct. Not exactly. There's 16 grantees. A couple of our grantees provide consortia services at more than one school.
Well, like community and schools, I don't know that I want to get that specific, but they serve several schools.
Yes.
Do they only get 143,000 or they get?
They have 6 unique grants from us right now, each grant being a partnership with a particular school. And so in total, right now, they are receiving $890,000 from us annually across 6 different grant partnerships with different schools.
Okay.
Some of them are in one cohort at 143, some at
So the 143,000 works out to per school, but it's 8 grantees per cohort.
Yes, I would say per grant, just to be technical, because if a grant application includes more than one school.
Okay.
Yeah. And we don't have any grantees that are more than 2 schools.
Okay, so let me ask this question. So we've gotten a lot of testimony today. At the beginning of the hearing from some experts who know this stuff and talk about how significant the community schools can be. And then we heard from a whole lot of public witnesses talking about how wonderful the program is. So if I look at any of these community schools, am I going to see, for instance, attendance, or I'll say absenteeism, or maybe I'll say truancy dropping from 40% to 20%? Probably not.
I'll sort of answer in 2 ways. First, because there are 14 eligible service areas to choose from, every grantee has a different sort of cafeteria portfolio of services that they provide. And with that, they set goals. Some grantees set goals related to attendance and then track those goals and provide data on those goals in their annual reporting to OSSI. Others might also see attendance outcomes, but may not be tracking it sort of one-to-one and might not have built it into their grant design. So unfortunately, my response is it depends. It depends on both what their goals were, site by site, and also intentional or unintended impacts of the programming that they provide. There are just such wide variations in the programming across sites.
Or to put it another way, there can be a broad spectrum of benefits, but there's a focus on a particular, maybe not just one, but on a particular area. And that's where there's likely to be more significant improvement.
Yes, and they're required to select at least 4 service areas in their grant application of the 14 outlined in your legislation.
So, Ms. Hoffman, I have a question here. How do you determine which schools qualify for DCPS Connected Schools program? But you sort of answered that, saying they raise their hand, you look and you see whether they have the foundation to do the work.
That's correct.
I have another question here. What metrics or key performance indicators do you evaluate to assess needs or successes? Can you provide an example of how you have evaluated your respective community school programs and made improvements or changes?
I'm so excited you asked these questions because the evidence base at the
If you want, I can hand you all of them.
I was going to say, yes, please. So I think to start, we are very excited that the Connected Schools Manager is a DCPS employee because it also means that they sit on the leadership team with the school. That means that they play a central role when the school is developing the comprehensive school plan, which outlines the school goals. We think it's so important that the Connected Schools Manager is aware of the academic outcomes the school is working towards so that they can find academic partners, for instance, is aware of any attendance goals that the school has so that they can find partners. A recent study that just concluded with AIR found that of students who had attendance challenges in 2023 to 24, we actually saw 2/3 improvement from 23-24 to 24-25. We also really think about outputs and outcomes as metrics for success. An output might be the number of partners that are available to students at a school, the number of students that are engaged in ongoing partner services, the number of students who are taking advantage of a food pantry. Outcomes, though, are the much bigger things that we're talking about, like attendance, student sense of belonging. So we look at a wide variety of metrics. We also track family engagement. We look at the DC Says data and see, are parents feeling like they have stronger communication at these schools? Are they feeling like there are structures and supports in place? Like I mentioned earlier, we've been working very closely to codify this work so that even as we're in 18 schools, we understand the best practices that should exist in all DC schools. And so we have an assessment that actually does help us to understand from the teacher perspective as well, what are the systems and structures that are in place in the school that facilitate family engagement, that ensure that parents have the supports that they need. We also do a community mapping process, which Principal Dabney spoke about earlier, which gives us the opportunity to not just rely on our survey data, but also is driven by design thinking and has us shadowing students over the course of the day, doing small focus group with families too, to really ascertain their needs and also to make sure that we're aware of all of the community assets that exist and that we're appropriately leveraging them. And I think you asked me a question too about how do we know when we're off track. So I'll give an example of one of the schools in our cohort had a specific goal around increasing student sense of belonging. It was one of our middle schools. Because we set these goals over the summer before the school year starts, our central services team, which is doing bi-weekly coaching at a minimum with schools, depending on what phase of implementation they're in, is also tracking with Connected Schools managers the progress towards those goals. We recognized we were not on track to hit the number of touch points with students that had an identified need to have more belonging. So we made a mid-year pivot to implement lunch bunch groups. That looked like us bringing in additional community-based organizations who could provide mentoring services during lunchtime at one of our schools to make sure that we were connecting students with a trusted adult. And so it's really that ongoing focus on continuous improvement and alignment with the larger school vision that the Connected Schools Manager is essential in driving.
So I'm pausing because there's the thought that's going through my mind is a non sequitur to your answer, and that is I'm going back to at the end of the grant, the school's going to have to absorb if they want to continue, which in a way is sort of a cut to the school, and that's troubling to me. I mean, if Kimball, just to pick Kimball, has $200,000 and is going to have to absorb it, that's $200,000. They're not going to be able to continue something else they're doing right now.
What I will say right now, 11 of the 18 schools that are involved with Connected Schools are all paying for the Connected Schools manager position on their local budget. So that's a decision that they prioritized with their LSAT team, and the others are funded through like their federal improvement funds.
Yeah, I'm focused on that $250,000 grant, but that's only 4 of the schools. Sorry about that.
I appreciate your commitment to our students and making sure that they have everything that they need. I think we deeply share that, and it's why we are also work so collaboratively with school leaders as they enter this process.
Going back to OSSI, the cohorts there are time limited. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So they were like 3-year cohorts, and then they were extended a year, and then I think they were extended a year, and then they were extended a year.
Yes, so we have 2 different cohorts currently. One was originally funded in 2022, the other in 2024. And so the restoration of funds to the budget in 25 and in 26 made it possible to finish out years 2 and 3 of the 2024
But
cohort.
it doesn't make sense to have them time limited. These schools, if community schools is valuable, then we want to continue the program.
I would go even further than that. There's a real challenge that our grantees expressed to us around it being a competitive grant program. And that is outlined in the legislation. But folks are really, and I think we heard it today, are really seeking sustained funding. This is the Community Schools Incentive Initiative. It's designed as an incentive grant to kind of whet your appetite for being a community school over a 3-year period, capped at $200,000 legislatively. And when we start thinking about really something new in this moment, which is about how do we want to expand and sustain community school models across our entire educational ecosystem, that really calls for some fresh thinking about
Okay.
about how we think about this work.
That's an honest answer. Mr. Ross, I'm going to turn to you for a second. So School Improvement Act. When we adopted the legislation, the fiscal impact statement said you needed 1 FTE. Now, fiscal impact statements say a lot of things. You asked us, and we put money in the budget for 3 FTEs. As I read your testimony, you don't yet have 3 FTEs on board, even though we are a quarter of the way through the fiscal year. And I think I'm reading this that you won't have your 3 FTEs until January, the end of next month.
Thanks so much for this question, Chairman. As you know, the district is in the process of coming out of a hiring freeze. That hiring freeze was lifted in late October of this year. And at that point in time, we sat down with our OSSI HR team, who was liaising very closely with district government, with the DCHR team, in order to make a determination about the quickest way to ensure that we not only were sourcing the highest and most qualified individuals for these roles, but also getting them on board as quickly as possible so that we could provide the supports to our schools. And we determined that the winter DCHR hiring fair, which was held yesterday on December 8th, was the best way to do that. We're able to hire much more quickly through DCHR hiring fairs than we are if we hire independently, because of the different processes that are required to hire independently versus hiring through the hiring fair. And so we anticipate having those individuals on board in January of this year. And we believe that's as quick as we could move, given that the hiring freeze was in place until the end of October of this year.
And did you get good candidates yesterday?
We had phenomenal candidates. There were over 3,000 candidates that showed up in person. And prior to that, we had about 100 resumes of folks who had submitted those resumes online. So we're incredibly excited about the candidate pool and feel very confident that we made an exceptional decision in going forward with the DCHR hiring.
So you know that I think OSSI's, this is going to sound horrible, but I think OSSI's slow about just about everything. Slow to get us reports, slow in wanting deadlines, like truancy report is the end of November, slow in procurements. Why didn't you go to the CA on September 30th and say, all right, the freeze is over in terms of the the money Congress denied us. So can we please get a waiver on the hiring? And why didn't you start then?
Thanks so much for this question, Chairman. The hiring freeze, we were informed that the hiring freeze was in place following September 30th until it was lifted at the end of October. So that hiring freeze sustained beyond the end of the FY25 fiscal year. And we advocated for hiring for these roles and for other key roles across the agency. But my understanding is that we were told that the hiring freeze remained in place until the end of October when it was lifted citywide. And we were thrilled that it was lifted citywide. And I will also note that the work underway by the Division of Teaching and Learning team, the Division of Health and Wellness team, and others across the agency at OSSI has ensured that our schools are well supported. We just concluded our round of beginning of year monitoring visits, and we did that with a collaborative team across OSSI and heard repeatedly from schools how much they appreciated the high level of support that they received this year.
You're speaking to the work of OSSU under the School Improvement Act
Correct.
without the 3 people.
Correct.
Using existing resources.
Correct.
Which could almost suggest you could absorb it, but we won't go there.
I will note it has required an extraordinary amount of work by a very talented team to do this that I do not believe would be able to be sustained without additional resources. So we are very, very glad to be bringing additional personnel resources on
So
board.
as I look at your testimony, on page 2 under school improvement, current school improvement work, in addition, OSSI is making robust supports available to schools in improvement status. So that's the 5%.
Correct. So as I think you may know, but for the benefit of anyone who may be listening online and may not be as familiar with what is a relatively complex landscape, OSSI is required under federal law, every state is required to develop a system of differentiated supports that identifies the bottom 5 performing % of schools for comprehensive support and improvement. But we also designate other types of schools that are struggling to make what would have been known under a prior authorization of ESEA as adequate yearly progress. And so those are targeted support and improvement schools. We do those designations annually. So those are schools where specific groups of students are failing to make sufficient progress.
I'm going to interrupt you there. I'm kind of concerned about or more interested in the 5% schools that our local School Improvement Act require.
Thanks so much for this
There's
question, Chair.
overlap between, because if we say in our local law 5% and the federal law says 5%, presumably it's the same schools. But our local law, I think, allows for it to be more.
Thanks so much for this question, Chairman. There's a provision in local law that pending additional funding availability enables OSSI to provide additional supports to schools beyond that bottom 5%. There was no funding included in the budget this year for that additional funding. Nevertheless, OSSI has looked under every rock and around every corner in order to find additional sources of funding for our schools that are struggling to meet all of their students' needs. And we have a number of different levers that we can use to do that. For example, when we run competitive grant funds, we have the opportunity to, in cases that make sense, apply priority points or preference points for different types of schools. And we've done that with our designated schools, with our bottom 5% of schools. We're doing that right now with philanthropic funds that we received from a local organization in
That's
order.
the 500,000.
We have 500,000 in philanthropic funds from a national organization called Accelerate, which is distinct from Accelerate DC. They're providing work funds to support our work in high impact tutoring. The grant that I was just referencing is our school climate micro grant. That's from an organization that's providing supports for schools that are leveraging their DC SES data, their school climate survey data, in order to make improvements for students. And so we're able to put priority points on those grants in order to make sure that those schools are schools serving our students that are most in need of support based on our data. are
Okay, but
getting
I'm
the
focused on the bottom 5%. So
Absolutely.
are you putting preference points for those to get money to those?
Correct.
Okay. Can you say more about the robust supports available to schools and improvement status?
Absolutely. So again, when we have competitive grant funds, we're able to provide priority points. But even before that, we, much as we heard from many of the witnesses, this work is really holistic. And the Accelerate DC framework names 5 domains for school transformation. And that's not by accident, that's by design. It's because you cannot do this work without a strong school leader, without strong, both teacher talent and other strong supports at the school level among the educators, without a positive school climate, without working deeply to accelerate academics, and without strong operational supports. And so upon designation, we work with each school in comprehensive support and improvement status to conduct a needs assessment and to make sure that they are doing a deep dive and analyzing their data. And it's a very collaborative process, and it involves a lot of back and forth.
So the needs assessment is part of the robust supports?
It sure is. It's phase 1, sitting down with schools and looking at their data. And we don't do this work alone. We do it in partnership with the team at DCPS, and we do it in partnership with the team at PCSB, because we heard universally from schools that this work needs to be aligned with the other work that's underway. And we have been thrilled with the partnership from both the DCPS central team and from the PCSB team in making sure that the work in the needs assessment that then drives the SIP, the school improvement plan that our schools in improvement status are putting in place, is work that is aligned with the work that they are doing, both under their charter and under DCPS's central office leadership. And again, these processes are back and forths. We want to make sure that the schools have the supports in place and that we have a shared understanding with the instructional leadership team, with the school leadership team, with individuals at the school who are thinking about MTSS, with the, we have had the connected schools managers who are supporting this work through community schools program, through DCPS's Connected Schools program, participate in many of our monitoring visits, because that surrounding support is so important for our schools in improvement status.
So I'm still looking at the same page in your testimony. The next paragraph, OSSE secured and is dedicating philanthropic funding for high impact tutoring at schools in improvement status. I think that's the 500,000, but is that targeted to the 5% or is it broader and includes the 5%?
That's exactly right. So
yeah, that was an or. You can't say that was exactly right. Which was exactly right?
Both and. So OSSE has a number of different sources of funding that we're using for our high impact tutoring work. As this body knows, high impact tutoring is the most impactful
Okay, but I'm
academic
asking about the
intervention.
500,000.
So we are dedicating those funds in order to evaluate work underway that we are funding in our schools in improvement status. So every school in comprehensive support and improvement status is implementing high impact tutoring. And then we're using that 500,000 in partnership with our research partner for this program, which is Johns Hopkins University, to analyze the impact of this work.
So the 500,000 is going to more than the 5% schools, but some of it is going to the 5% schools.
We have approximately 1.5 million that we're dedicating to our schools in improvement status to provide high impact tutoring in all of them. The 500,000 is going to our research partners in order to do the evaluation. And those are philanthropic funds that we got from a national organization. It is, they were very, very excited that we were thinking about researching and evaluating the connection between high impact tutoring and school improvement, because it is a connection that seems, based on all of the research, that it would be aligned. We know that high impact tutoring is a very powerful academic intervention and attendance intervention, and not many other jurisdictions are thinking about pairing them. And so a national organization, Accelerate, was very excited to fund us in order to better understand the relationship between those two things. That is specifically the way that we could leverage high impact tutoring supports in order to transform academics and attendance at our schools in improvement status.
Transformational leadership. There actually was somebody who testified who criticized transformational leadership. That's one of the components. How do you measure transformational leadership?
Ultimately, the measure of transformational leadership is whether that leader is successful in transforming the school and turning around the school. And the best measure that we have for that is our accountability framework. But we're meeting with school leaders 3 times a year at our beginning of year, middle of year, and end of year monitoring in order to ensure that they're making progress on the interim
You know,
measures.
I'm wincing. And I'm wincing because, gosh, I remember years ago, first hearing from a former chancellor that it takes 5 years to measure a school. It takes 5 years for a school to turn around, 5 years for a school to show progress. We ought to be able to identify a transformational leader before the 5 years is up. Like, we got a good one here. We didn't get a good one here. So how does OSSE measure transformational leadership? Transformational. Yes.
Absolutely. So we're monitoring our schools and improvement status 3 times annually. And as part of those visits, are working with our school leaders to understand how they're making progress against their school improvement plans. And their school improvement plans for our schools in comprehensive support and improvement status are over 3 years, which is what federal law requires. And so we're using that time period and we're using the interim measures established in those school improvement plans in order to determine whether they are successfully turning around or transforming their school.
So tell me why I'm wrong in feeling like the federal program really hasn't produced great results, which is why we did the local law. My recollection, it may not be true with the current cohort compared to the last one, but over time, there've been schools that have been in a cohort and then are in the next cohort. Like they didn't get out of it.
That is
And the goal here is to get those schools out of the whatever, I can't remember it's another one of those initial things, CSI.
Absolutely. So the goal is for schools to exit status, and the exit criteria require actual improvement. So a school cannot exit school improvement
Yeah.
status if every other school around it gets worse. It must actually get better, and it must get better on those research evidence-based, valid
Yeah.
and reliable
Well,
measures.
like I think Baloo Stay has been stuck in it for a little while, hasn't it?
But so
And Garnett Patterson Stay.
we have significant examples of schools that have exited status over the years. Most schools have exited status. We also have a specific category for schools that have not exited status, that is, that are redesignated. For our targeted support and intervention schools, that's called ATSI, Additional Targeted Support and Intervention.
Yeah.
For our CSI, our Comprehensive Support and Improvement schools,
Yes, but I don't feel like we did the School Improvement Act because I didn't feel like the progress we were making under the federal law was good enough. But even these schools that are exiting, is there academic achievement at levels that we think are good?
so there must be real achievement, real progress, and real improvement for schools to exit status. Again, if a school does not improve, but is no longer in the bottom 5%, then that school goes into monitored intervention and support status or additional targeted support and improvement status. A school must make actual progress in order to exit status. And so where we see schools exiting status, that improvement is real. It is absolutely something that we are mathematically, we will always have a bottom 5%, and that's true, full stop. But we are laser focused at OSSE on ensuring that the rate of academic achievement and the rate of student learning at that bottom 5% continues to increase, so that our bottom 5% of schools become schools that everyone in this room would be absolutely thrilled to attend and would enable them to thrive on the life path of their choice.
Ms. Hoffman, DCPS is trying to get MTSS in all schools?
Thank you for the question. And I also just want to thank you all so much for holding the hearing today for us to be able to talk about MTSS. So
And
DC.
keeping you here until after 7 p.m.
This is important work. It's important that we talk about it regardless of what time of day it is. So MTSS, the district started rolling out in 2021. And I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to share some of our reflections on the expert testimony because it really validated for us the strategy that we took in rolling out the work. MTSS is one of our core power practices. And one of the things that I think you all were really right in pushing on is how do we ensure implementation fidelity? And that's one of the things that's been crucial for us too, because it's one thing to say you're doing MTSS and it's another to actually have the evidence to back it up. This year, through our power practices, we have codified for all schools a set of core implementation practices that let us know that this work is on the right track. They're clear. One is around meeting collaboration, right? And so that makes sure like our meetings being well run are the right people in the room. I think we heard earlier today how important it is that the right team is in place. That means that you have your school psychologist there, your attendance counselor, you have a social worker, you have grade level leads, all the people in the room to bring that holistic approach to the work. One of the second pieces of this work is making sure that there's tiered evidence decision making in place. We spent the past couple of years also developing an evidence intervention library that talks that covers academics as well as behavior and attendance interventions that need to be implemented at a school across multiple levels. Another one that is really important to us is that there are strong success plans in place. If we are meeting and talking about students, but we don't have a codified plan in place, how do we know if we're actually making progress? Our Panorama system allows us to look at data across all of the different whole child metrics, and it also allows us to capture the success plans for students. So who in the building is responsible? I think we talked about little Johnny, for making sure that Johnny is getting his check-in and check-out, and how are things going? Another really important part of this process too, and it's been one of the things I've been really excited to see, is because we are codifying these success plans, we're able to see over time how they're working. You're able to look back at the previous school year and see, was something else more effective for little Johnny, or did this work? And you're able to see it as students also move through schools. And so while this year we have really leaned into making sure that we have that holistic look of clear expectations that we're looking for. We also have observational data, so questions, so things that you can be looking for in meetings, as well as questions to be asking teachers and students about how they're experiencing the practice. Because again, I can say that we're doing all these things, but if you went and polled our teachers, would they say that? Would they say that there was strong tier 1 in place? Would they say that they know that there are grade level meetings? And this gives us a level of transparency to really begin to triangulate data. So yes, we're doing MTSS.
And you're confident that it's being implemented with fidelity across the system?
I am confident that we have data on where it is being implemented with fidelity. And in places where we have concerns, we are able to provide intensive coaching. One of the things that we also heard from one of the expert witnesses today is how important it is that school teams get support in implementing this work. We have a central services team that sits on the cluster support model. There are 6 individuals who work with schools who have demonstrated a need for additional support in MTSS implementation. They can provide 8 to 16 hours over the course of the month where they engage in goal-driven coaching cycles with the school teams. That looks like them coming to meetings in schools, giving feedback on the success plans, ensuring that school teams understand how to run these effective meetings, where to go if they have questions about intervention. So even for schools that have a demonstrated area of growth, we also have aligned supports for them. And I'll say that we believe MTSS is a very important school improvement strategy. And so we've prioritized those schools that are in comprehensive support and improvement status for MTSS coaching, because we know that the only way to ensure students are going to be successful, it's not through chance or circumstance, like the chancellor said, but it's about being strategic. And it's about making sure that we know at any given moment how students are doing and if we're putting the right systems and structures in place to support their growth. And so those schools actually have intensive MTSS coaching, in addition to coaching in math and ELA from our cluster support model team, to ensure that they're implementing the strategies that make sure that we are tracking before the summative assessment, before we get the score on the report card, we know how things are going.
Give me a second. I got permission. I think that's it for questions for the moment. Possible we may have some follow-up questions, maybe not. But thank you, each of you, for your testimony. And to all the folks who are no longer in the room, but who testified earlier, thank you for your testimony as well. I'm going to conclude this hearing. This has been a hearing on school improvement in the District of Columbia, including the implementation of the School Improvement Amendment Act for 2023. The record in this matter for this hearing will close at 5 p.m. on Tuesday, December 23rd of this year. The time is 7:13 p.m. and we are adjourned.